The Maine People Podcast, available everywhere. Click subscribe so you never miss an episode. Welcome back to the Maine People Podcast. Great stories about interesting people in the state of Maine. That's what I promise in the Maine People Podcast. And it may be famous people or it may not be famous people, but I do promise it'll be interesting stories that they tell. Ty is the next guest on the Maine People Podcast. He's a paranormal investigator for real. The group is called Haunt Me. You're one of the founding members. What are there, 5 or 6 current members of Haunt Me, Ty?
There's 4 of us right now, but with a tech team of about 8.
Wow, we have a lot of people on the road with you. No wonder these videos, no wonder your episodes look so great.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, it's definitely a team effort there, though. I can't... There's a lot of work that goes into making my ugly mug look great, and it has nothing to do with any talent that I have. It's all our team and our editors working on it really hard in production.
Before we even show a clip, I want to say I cannot believe, and I think I said this, you were on the radio with us on WPOR a couple months ago on Halloween, and I think I referred to this as, the best produced show that isn't on TV. I can't believe you haven't had some offers from someone to pick up your show. You're on your 9th season right now. They're better produced than a lot of the ghost hunting paranormal shows you see on TV. You've got a product that's ready for air.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so it's funny because we really do love our independence that we're able to have with the show. Like a lot of TV shows work on networks. Networks work with ratings, and people aren't going to watch your show if it's not exciting. And so one of the things that we have been focused on is always telling the truth of our experience. And so hopefully our viewers know that in the aspect of when we perform an investigation, you see exactly what happens to us that night. Sometimes we catch a boot, you don't see anything, but I hope that lends more gravity to the moments that we are able to contact the paranormal and have something a little strange happen.
Towards the end of the podcast, I think the last segment we're going to talk about is kind of one that really sort of broke you, and we'll talk about that coming up.
There's some moments in the paranormal that it's not all scary. Like I've talked with you about this before. It's not all scary, and sometimes it can be very heartfelt. Other times it can be incredibly scary, and I think that is the upcoming clip that you want to share first, right?
It's a scary moment of actually getting a ghost on a recording. So let's hit that, and then we'll explain what's going on afterwards.
House, what do you need from us tonight?
Let's listen.
That thing held
seeing
red.
those things solid red light.
My God, I am like screaming inside. I'm doing everything I can not to freaking lose my mind.
Let's see if the house has anything to say.
So you're recording there with the house, and we're going to pick up that in just a second, right where we left off. You're recording, you're talking to this haunted house.
Yeah, so a little context there because you picked a clip that's kind of in a hard mode, okay? So we talked about ghosts before, John. There's, human spirits, then there are other types of spirits out there. And I firmly believe that after 10 years working in the field, that not everything is easy to pinpoint as a Casper event, And so what that moment that you're seeing right now has to do with is an almost complete strikeout at one of the most haunted locations that we had been to date, which is the Hinsdale House in Upper New York, I'm sorry. So the thing about the Hinsdale House that is very unique is that there's a lot of lore attached to it. It chased out a family in the 80s. The Dandy family was literally had to move away and abandon the house because a quote unquote fractured exorcism was performed and only made the house worse. So basically they brought in a Catholic priest. He blessed the house. It did not work. That was the point of effort. The house was abandoned. There's one more owner after that. They also left the house. And so since the mid 90s, it had been standing pretty much abandoned until the early 2010s or so. A paranormal investigator named Dan Clace came along, fell in love with the house, which is important because I'll tell you in a moment, couldn't figure out the attraction he had to this place, but knew he needed to save it. That's how we came involved. Did a ton of research about the house itself before we went back into it, knew what it was capable of, and knew it wasn't a typical haunting. What we were able to deduce is that the house itself is the entity. As weird as that sounds,
That's
it has
crazy.
ghosts. I know, it has ghosts inside of it as well. The trick is that the house seems to get a hook in people and makes you want to come back, makes you want to protect it, makes you want to buy a house, even though Dan had just bought his home for his family and had no surplus funds. He found the money to make the house stay alive. That's what this house does, and we knew that going into it. So the EVP clip that you're about to see, electronic voice phenomena. Sorry, that's what EVP.
I was about to ask you to explain. I knew it was electronic something.
Electronic voice phenomena. It's neat because a lot of people are like, "Oh, when you ask a question, why don't you just hear it?" Well, your ears can't pick up electromagnetic energy, but the copper coiling in a lot of these audio devices can. There's a belief that spirits communicate and interact with electromagnetic energy. That's why a lot of our tech focuses on that. And that's why my recorder is also digital, so that we can ask a question and listen back later in the silence to see if there's any answers in there. So after having a really confusing investigation that there was just dead end after dead end after dead end, and it was horrifying too, and very, very tiring to be in that place, we spun the questioning towards the house itself on this recorder, and that's when we started getting intelligent answers.
And here's the second clip when you get the answers back from the house.
Energy.
So clear.
It's so clear. Camera people, hold on to yourselves if you get tired tonight. Oh my.
So that was your big cliffhanger. Ty, what the house says, like you said, the house itself says it's looking for energy. And you said we referenced camera people, hold on. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so that's important to understand for the clip, because like I was saying beforehand, we were getting just weird, no information, weird answers, but no information all night until we started questioning the house, right? Which is why it's acceptable to say that we're talking to the house, as weird as that sounds. But it's important to know that one of the claims of that place is that people lose energy really fast. People fall asleep, seasoned investigators won't make it to midnight. And we kind of laughed at that until it was about 45 minutes into our investigation. I think it was couldn't be further past maybe 7:15 at night. And our team has been doing this for close to a decade. So they're trained to stay up all night. And that's when we lost our first cameraman. Needed to go out, sit by a campfire and have some caffeine. And another hour later, another one fell asleep. And then we started having investigators where, if you watch the episode, there's some points where they're sitting on, a chair and their eyes are closed. And it's only 3 hours into investigation that's going to last 9, 10, 11 hours long. And this clip is at the end of that arc, I would say. There was probably 2 investigators that hadn't fallen asleep yet. Got everyone up, and we did this EVP session, asked the house what it wanted from us, and it said energy. So then it clicked in immediately how threatening this place actually was, because it was getting what it wanted all night long. So the tables turned a little bit on investigation. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Great stories. Ty is from Haunt Me on the Maine People Podcast. Forgot the name of my own podcast. But I don't forget who sponsors it and makes it all happen. If you want to subscribe to Chubby Dog Coffee, you can subscribe monthly. You can order as many bags as you want delivered to your home. Fantastic coffee. And with promo code BELLA at chubbydogcoffee.com, you can take 15% off your first order. And it's orders like that make this podcast still be able to stick around. There's great coffee to choose from. This is dark Uganda, rustic and bold with subtle fruit notes. It's called Order 66. Or maybe you want to choose, this one was available this month, the French Roast, dark roasted coffee, smoky, bold, and richly sweet. Check out chubbydogcoffee.com, freshly roasted and delivered to your home. There's more coming up with Ty and Haunt Me on the Maine People Podcast.
The way my dad brought me up was always to work hard and to treat people well.
You ready to go for a ride?
We try to keep our goal to make people feel comfortable buying their cars and feel comfortable with the people they're working with.
Nice. Oh, it looks good over here.
So become part of our family. We really mean that. Without question, we're in this together.
We're going to take care of you and treat you like your family anyways.
This looks awesome.
Yankee Ford has so many people willing to help and make this tough time a little bit easier.
Radio207.com only plays original country music from Maine singers, songwriters, and bands. Streaming online and on your smart speaker. Radio207.com is on the air now. Radio207.com. Only Maine, only country music. Your next online event can be perfect thanks to virtualproductionsgroup.com. The Maine People Podcast couldn't happen without them, and they can make your remote streaming event absolutely technically perfect. High quality live and pre-recorded productions for corporate events, weddings, tournaments, charities, and more with virtualproductionsgroup.com. Back on the Maine People Podcast, telling stories, interesting stories of people from Maine. You grew up in Maine. How did you start doing this, Ty? How did you get into this paranormal investigation, Ghostbusters business?
Up in Maine, it's really, I wish I had a better story for you there of how I started in the paranormal. Everyone, when I do conventions and do interviews like this, everyone's looking for that, like, oh, I defended my family from an evil Casper who came at us at the witching hour, and I had to find my place. Right, it would be a great story. My story is kind of just one of interest. I grew up with someone that had some experiences, nothing life-changing whatsoever. But it really wasn't until I got into high school that I started researching the unknown. I blame a lot of my interest on X-Files and Buffy the Vampire Slayer as being that gateway drug to actually start learning about people who are having real experiences and what that might be for them. I kind of fell into haunt me in a really weird way, in that I graduated from college early, tried to get out as fast as I could, thought it was going to be a great idea to, come home. All my friends, from my hometown will be back too. It'll be wonderful. We'll just start over like I've never been gone for 4 years. But what happened when you graduate early is everyone else goes back to school. And so I was broke and I had no one, and I was living at home, and I actually found a local group. And that's how I made friends with someone who I consider my sister now, and that's Carol Cleveland. And we were in an untelevised group just exploring for quite a while. And that's actually how I went to Waverly Hills for the first time. And then from there, my friend Ashley Brooks was interested in the paranormal as well and wanted to start a show about it. And I kind of poo-pooed it, honestly. I didn't think that we could do what people on television do. And we met up with our friend Nick Nordfors, who had just graduated from NYU with a film degree. And that was really how we just started putting together the framework for season 1 of the show 10 years ago.
Wow. Well, it worked out really good because season 9 now, which you just referenced, Waverly Hills, one of the most haunted buildings in America. The next clip, though, is at Hinsdale House in New York. And you kind of get a warning in this episode to not go in the house. Let's take a look.
Earlier today when we first got here, I was doing an interview out front with this woman that helps take care of the place. She has a son, and there's something very special about him. Everybody says that he sees everything that goes on here. And he came over, he just went like that, so I did it back. And then he points right up to the window upstairs. And I go, "Do you see something?" He didn't answer me. So I got right cheek to cheek and I said, "Should I go up in there? Should I go in the house?" Are you ready?
Yeah.
Nick told me that okay, so I'm in the mirror and I see whatever, blah, blah. Nick said he saw it too. But he saw that lady's son smiling at me.
In the mirror.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't you remember?
Yep, he did that.
What did Ty just explain? What did I see in the mirror?
Joker. Everybody's seeing smiling.
He wasn't happy.
Nick saw him smiling.
He was telling you what's in the house.
Oh my God.
He was trying to tell us.
I'm like sick to my stomach.
Kate, 12 hours ago, that kid told us what we found out 5 minutes ago.
All right, Ty, you're going to have to explain. What were you seeing in that house?
He went like this to me.
It was really hard, but whenever we would see a spirit, for lack of a better term, they were always smiling like jigsaw style, ear to ear, like Joker. It was
Weird.
it was odd enough throughout the entire night that we were seeing this, but at the end of this clip, what you're seeing right now is all of us putting together a puzzle piece that that wonderful young man clued us in about 12 to 14 hours later. We thought he was just being kind and was interested in our investigation and the cameras and everything like that. But what it was he was grabbing Carol's attention, pointing to the window of the house where all the smiling activity went down, which was harmful in the way. And he was warning us about that energy problem in his own way, the best that he could.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't hear him the way that he needed us to hear him until the very, very end of the night. Carol put it together that the smiles that he was doing for her and pulling his lips from, as big as he can get them, was warning us about the residents that are trapped inside the house, the ghosts, what they all are like now. And that was probably the most chilling moment of any investigation that I've done.
A little goosebumpy just hearing the story.
Yeah, it wasn't a warm, safe feeling, and it was at the very, very end of the night too. So it was like the last thing that we realized about the Hinsdale house was that for as much experience as we had and as prepared as we were, it played us like a fiddle. For the 12 hours we were there, we were in its grasp, thinking that we had it under control. And there was not one point in the Hinsdale house the first time we were there that we had any control whatsoever.
What season was that of Haunt Me?
I believe that was season 5. And then we were crazy enough to go back again, because that's what the house asked for on us, in season 8. And instead of spending one night in the house, we spent multiple nights at the house to really get to the heart of what was going on there. And that's the entire season 8 was just that one house. And it served up enough content for an entire season. So yeah, it was something else. Yeah.
Speaking of a lot of content, this has ended up being one of our longest podcasts for this season of the Maine People Podcast. And I will say, if you're listening to the audio only version, you're missing out on some really good video, but you're getting the gist of the story. There are a lot of ghost stories in Maine. Vassalboro, Maine is where the next story takes place. We're going to bring it home to Maine with Ty and the crew from Haunt Me, but it's such a compelling and interesting story, we don't want to shorten it. So it's coming up by itself in a feature episode of the Maine People Podcast. And the good news is it's the next episode and you can watch it right now. The Maine People Podcast, available everywhere. Click subscribe so you never miss an episode.